I'm Andy Donnelly, host and producer of the Celtic Show here on the CKUA radio network. And I've been a part of this station since 1996. I've seen many changes, trials and tribulations here over the years. With me today is CKUA's Chief Operating Officer, Katrina Ingram. Katrina, you took on the role of Chief Operating Officer in 2011. From your perspective in senior management, where do you see the organization today?
Well, it's a really interesting organization, Andy, because we're 85 years old, but in a lot of ways we're only 16 years old. The CKUA before 1997 was very much different than CKUA today. And what I see as some of our major strengths today is definitely music. Music is at the heart of what we do. We also do arts and cultural programming. But when I think about music, I think about the music library and this vast collection that's ever growing, that dates back all the way to the history of pre-recorded music at the turn of the century. So that is a really special piece of what we do. Then we have our programmers like yourself, Andy, and they just have this incredible knowledge, this vast musical education that they take listeners on every week. And that's really what keeps people coming back week after week for a show. Our audience itself is very diverse. They are as varied as the musical collection itself. And I remember being in Red Deer a couple of years ago, we were doing a focus group. And this one gentleman, he stood up and he said, you know, I love everything about CKUA, but you guys play way too much jazz. And the woman sitting right beside him said, no, you don't. I love the amount of jazz you play. Don't touch it. And that is really the challenge that we have at CKUA, is we have this audience that is very varied in their tastes, and we have to serve all of them. And that's the challenge that we have as an organization.
Being that we're so different in how we raise money and pay bills, it's probably quite different than most. What are some of the challenges and opportunities in that area?
Well, CKUA is a listener-supported station, so 60% of our revenue comes directly from our listeners, our donors. And we've been very fortunate that way. Even though we've seen revenue flatten out a little bit in terms of donations, we've been very fortunate to have so many donors step up and give to CKUA. So if I could just break down the budget a little bit, $4.5 million, that's our operating budget on an annual basis. And about $3 million of that comes directly from donors. $2 million from our monthly subscribers and $1 million from the 2 on-air campaigns that we do every year. We also take in about $1 million from advertising and corporate sponsorships. And that's an area that we have to be a bit careful in. We never want to sound too commercial. So even though we're allowed to do a lot more advertising by way of our CRTC license, we actually hold back on the amount of advertising that we do because we believe it serves our listeners better to not have so much on the air. The remainder of our budget comes in through rentals on our towers. These are our transmission towers, and we rent out space to other organizations. And that hasn't really been a growth area for us. Other media organizations are consolidating, there's less of them, and so there's less need for tower rental space. That really makes up our $4.5 million. One of the challenges for us, ongoing challenges, is the emergency public warning system contract that we lost back in 2010. And that was about 15% of our annual budget, or $700,000 a year. And that was something that we counted on year over year. It wasn't a one-shot deal. And I think it would be really challenging for any organization to lose 15% of their budget. It's a huge number, but it's especially challenging for a not-for-profit organization like CKUA. And we know that it takes a listener about 5 years on average for them to become a donor. So to grow donation revenue, which is our biggest source of revenue, organically to replace that 15%, it is an enormous challenge. So that's some of the things that we're facing in terms of our revenue, just the need for more donors and the need to grow our revenue to be sustainable. So really, Andy, when it comes to revenue, there is no magic bullet. What we're going to be doing is trying a lot of new things and having a lot of smaller revenue streams making up the difference.
On the track of growth and evolution, can you talk for a bit about this wonderful new building that we're in and how that fits in the overall plans of CKUA?
Well, we absolutely needed to move from our old building. It was a very unsafe place. There was mold in the walls, there was water leaks, there was a gas leak. I personally had to evacuate the space on pretty much an annual basis. The structure itself was even starting to shift. So not only was it unsafe for us as staff, it was also unsafe for our precious record collection. So we're in a brand new space and it's amazing to be here. This place is incredible. We have the latest in broadcasting equipment. It's wired for audio and video, and we can present all kinds of digital content through this building. But most importantly, Andy, this building is about community. It is a public-facing building and it's about inviting the community in. So we have this lovely performance space where we can do concerts. We have an amazing outdoor terrace, just incredible space, and our library is so wonderful. We can do all kinds of lunch and learns there and really invite people in to see the music and engage with it up close and personal. So we're very fortunate to be here. And what we need to do is we need to find ways to leverage this building to drive new revenue streams. So we're working on finding tenants to come and be in the space that we're not using. We're working on an event rental plan so that other people can take advantage of this space. And we're also looking at ways to leverage all of the digital technologies that we have available to us.
How exactly, Katrina, are we paying for this place?
It's an interesting question, and it's one we get quite a lot, and I really need to make the distinction between operating and capital. So operating is the money that we raise through our monthly donors and through our on-air campaigns, and that money goes directly to keeping the lights on, to paying salaries, to making sure we can distribute our content. All of that money is used to operate CKUA. Capital campaign is something that we've been undertaking for the last couple of years, and that capital money is what we're using to fund the building. So we've been very fortunate to have raised a fairly significant sum of money that's directed at capital. We still have about $7 million that we need to raise, and we are in the midst of a capital campaign that is specifically targeted to raise that money. In addition to the 7 that we need to pay off our building as quickly as possible, we also need another $5 million for endowment. And that's really about ensuring the future longevity of CKUA so that we can be here for many, many years to come. And that is the distinction between the two. It's a very important thing. The operating and the capital are kept separate.
So Katrina, what about Calgary? What's the plans for CKUA's presence there in the future?
Well, Calgary is an absolutely vital piece of CKUA's future, and in fact, a third of our revenue comes directly from Calgarians, and a third of our listenership is in Calgary. So Calgary is a very, very important market for us. Now, over the years, we've had a lot of staff changes. People have left for other opportunities. There was a little bit of downsizing that took place in 2010. And so overall, we have less staff now in Calgary than we did when I started at CKUA in 2007. Part of the challenge with Calgary is the space. So we're very fortunate to have affordable rent at the EPCOR Center, but it's not really a facility that's conducive to building a team of people in Calgary, and that is really what we need to do. And so we're in the midst of partnering with the National Music Center. They are developing a wonderful space in Calgary, and we're going to be part of that. And we're hoping to be in Calgary in that space by 2015 with a daily flagship show. That's our vision for Calgary.
There's been some confusion with our listeners about what it means for CKUA to be digital and to offer digital content. Can you tell us about the thinking behind that?
Well, Andy, it's a bit of a complicated issue, but if I had to sum it up into one point, it's about content on demand. So today's audience is all about getting content when they want it, where they want it, how they want it. And that is going to become the dominant form of media consumption. And that's very different than traditional media broadcasting, radio stations, television stations, print newspapers, pushing out content on their schedule. And you're already seeing this happening, this shift that's taking place. So if you want to know more information about a song, you want to get a podcast, you want to get access to a television show, you go to the internet and you go and get that content on your terms. And really, as today's audiences who are growing up digital become more and more demanding in terms of how they get their content, you're going to see this as a dominant way that media is accessed.
Which brings me to my next question, Katrina, one that I'm asked at just about every event and festival I attend from listeners to the station. The question is, why doesn't CKUA put its shows online and offer podcasts to the listeners?
Well, it would be amazing if we could do that, Andy, just simply podcast everything as is. The biggest barrier to doing that is music copyright. It's extremely expensive to get the rights to music and distribute it digitally. And even if we could negotiate those rights, there's many different stakeholders that you actually need to strike agreements with. So it's a very complicated thing to do, and that's why we don't simply package up our music shows as they are and podcast them. You think about digital distribution of music, it's really changed a lot over the years. Going back to the late 1990s when Napster came on the scene, it really blew apart the music industry. It really changed things, and it paved the way for organizations like Apple and iTunes, which again shifted how music is purchased. So instead of purchasing full albums, people were now buying 99-cent songs. And I see that shift happening once again with all of these streaming services like Rdio and Pandora and Spotify. They're all about giving people access to music for a low monthly fee. So the idea of ownership is gone, and now it's all about access. And you look at the entire music copyright area, and it's such a complicated thing, but it has such a great impact on what we're able to do here at CKUA and what we're not able to do. And we can learn a lot from what happened to the music industry in terms of how we move forward at CKUA.
The way people listen to music too, and this is so different as well, as we mentioned, with access and programs that you would listen to in the old way where you would tune in at a certain time and listen to a program. It's all about availability, and people don't want really to be tuning in at 6 o'clock or 4 o'clock for a show that they can get anytime.
That's absolutely true. Right now, the dominant form of distribution is still, for us, FM terrestrial radio. But pretty soon, audiences are not going to tune in, for example, 6 o'clock on a Friday for the Celtic Show. That's not going to fly with them because, again, it goes back to that wanting content on demand. They want things on their terms. And this isn't a CKUA problem. This is the way media is being consumed now.
So what are we doing about it?
Well, we haven't got all the specifics figured out yet, but one thing that we do know is we need to develop content that we own the copyright to. So what that could look like is doing interviews with artists or having them come and do a performance, and we get them to sign off on the digital rights for that, and then we can distribute that content. In addition to that, we have great spoken word content, primarily in our arts and cultural coverage, so that's another opportunity for us. The challenge is balancing the needs of our current audience while attracting new audience. And it's a really big challenge, but it's one that we need to figure out.
Finally, Katrina, what's your hope for CKUA?
My hope for CKUA is that we remain relevant. We're 85 years old. I hope that we live to see 100 and beyond. And I hope that the decisions that we're making today put us in a good place so that we can get there. That's my hope for CKUA.
Katrina, thanks for being here. And thanks to each and every one of you out there that listen and support this, the greatest radio station in the world, the mighty CKUA.